How does a director take a sleazy, problematic 1980s slasher franchise and turn it into a candy-colored, queer erotic comedy about trans liberation and bodily kink? This was pitched as a nostalgic midnight sleepover movie, but what actually ended up on screen is a bizarre psychosexual collision between high-minded art house deconstruction and pure lake monster gore. Hit like and subscribe, and let's dive deep into teenage sex and death at Camp Miasma. The story kicks off with Chris Williams, an over-intellectualizing indie filmmaker played by Anna Einbinder. She lands a gig of a lifetime, rebooting a radioactive, long-dead slasher series called Camp Miasma. To figure out how to resurrect the franchise's mass killer, Little Death, Chris tracks down the original reclusive final girl, Billy Presley, played by Gillian Anderson, who has spent the last 40 years quietly living near the abandoned grounds. And if you're walking into this expecting a traditional jump scare legacy sequel like Halloween 2018, you're in for a massive tonal shock. This isn't trying to scare you with dark hallways, it's trying to rewire how you process genre tropes entirely. The movie is fundamentally an unhinged, affectionate tribute to 80s splatter cinema, which I so much appreciate. Especially the opening credits and everything, just the way it's shot on 35mm. You can tell Jane Schoenbrun has really lived in these VHS tapes growing up. But this movie isn't exactly a slasher movie. It routes like every single beat through a deeply queer horror lens that totally recontextualizes the campiness of this movie. And it's sort of like a horror comedy too, very much so. The fictional Camp Miasma movies within the movie are played with just so much ridiculous, hyperbolic sleaze that the whole thing just operates just as a smooth comedy. Like the first kill in the movie, in the opening scene, he stabs the dude and just a fountain of blood just pours up. It's like 20 feet in the air, okay? It's like a itchy and scratchy sketch from The Simpsons. But the Friday the 13th franchise explicitly exists in this movie's universe. It's a little surreal, I guess, since Camp Miasma lore is almost like a carbon copy of Friday the 13th. Camp counselors, something, the killer, Little Death coming out of the lake. Just a nitpick, I just wish this was this universe's Friday the 13th. And Anna Einbinder, I'm a fan of hers. I think Hacks, the show she's on HBO Max, is probably one of the greatest comedies I've seen in like probably the last decade. And it's sort of a weird juxtaposition with her relationship with her co-star in Hacks and Gillian Anderson in this. And Hacks is like a genuine friendship, professional too. In this, it's much more sexually charged. And I think they have a great dynamic, her and Gillian Anderson. Instead of the antagonistic comedy mentorship in Hacks, this is more like a dance of power and surrender in a bit. And Gillian Anderson's great. She's phenomenal as like puncturing Chris's academic arrogance with her quiet, lived-in authority. And I have to give a shout out to Jack Haven, who delivers an incredible amount of raw and sympathetic emotion entirely through body language as Little Death, and even you get a little bit of expression, a little window in her mask. And this movie looks fantastic. I mean, it's, like I said before, it's shot on 35mm. They have some gorgeous and intentionally artificial visual design. You have like backgrounds that are almost like pastel, candy color to painted matte backdrops. That it kind of just makes the whole outdoor camp set look like a stylized theater stage. I just love the look of it. And speaking of Jack Haven, there is one scene that, I mean, it's fantastic. I think it's jaw-dropping. It's like a fluid one-shot sequence where Little Death effortlessly like carves through an entire bunk of camp counselors. It's just a one-shot take. Was it actually one shot? I don't know. Maybe they did some little tricks here and there, but I thought it was like a standout scene in this movie. And there are a lot of directors who try to ape David Lynch, and I think they always fall short. Jane Schoenbrun manages to capture that uncanny dream logic rhythm better than almost anyone working today, yet still putting her own unique spin on just surreal dread. But I have to say, I very much like this movie and respect this movie, but I don't love this movie. Not like I was expecting to, just hearing buzz from everyone who's already seen it. I think because the narrative is just so laser focused on exploring like sexual awakening through media we consume as kids, the plot sort of telegraphs its moves pretty early on. So unlike I Saw the TV Glow, which I love that movie, it was vague and expansive enough to invite endless existential readings to it, even though it's obviously about the trans experience. This one just lays its cards out flat and could have pushed the stranger less predictable ground that, I would have probably liked more, but that's just me as a straight white cis man. So Schoenbrun, he conceived this after the dread-heavy slog of their earlier films, explicitly wanting to make a cozy, chaotic midnight tape movie that felt like a random just VHS you rented on a dare at a 1990 sleepover. So this was backed with a $10 million budget by Brad Pitt's Plan B and boutique distributor MUBI. This marked a massive leap in resources, practical gore rigs, and polish for Schoenbrun without losing their compromising DIY edge. And Alex G returns to deliver a hypnotic score that perfectly clashes with the nostalgic licensed needle drop through the entire runtime. And like I said, your expectations are going to be just varied for this. This won like the Queer Palm at Cannes 2026, and it put a massive spotlight on the film. But it also baffled casual horror fans who expected a straight up legacy slasher instead of a psychosexual relationship study wrapped in fake intestines. But I want to break down the ending and some of the themes of this movie because I think it might throw some people for a loop, and I think it's probably one of the more interesting aspects of the film. So if you want to see my spoiler-free overall thoughts and final score, check the chapter down below. But yeah, let's talk about that ending. So it's known that Chris can only orgasm when she's kind of role-playing as somebody in a slasher movie. And there is something supernatural going on because these movies aren't made by people. They're made by Little Death themselves. They rise out of the lake and start murdering people, and it's turned into a movie. So then Chris, she just completely throws away the studio pitch. She's abandoning Hollywood ambition to join Billy and Bunk 5. So Billy, she sets up the twin bed surrounded by candlelight and rose petals and coaching Chris to stop overthinking and mentally step into the killer's perspective. Because when she gets there, she's running through everyone she's known, and they're all being killed by Little Death, and Little Death is chasing her. So Little Death comes into the cabin, no pun intended. And like what Billy did in the original Camp Miasma movie, she had her first climax and able to see through Little Death as she is about to get killed. She's teaching Chris to do this, to get out of her own head and go into Little Death's perspective. So as they're making love, through the killer's POV, a double-ended spear pierces Chris and Billy at the exact same time. Chris hits peak sexual release and death simultaneously while Billy's blood drips onto her face. So underneath the lake, there's this area that's pulsating pink light cave that Little Death comes out of. It's lined with VHS tapes, and a newly forged Camp Miasma movie spits out of the wall in this pink cave on VHS, entitled after this movie, Teenage Sex and Death at Camp Miasma. And, on a warm, sunlit summer morning, it was winter before Little Deaths came out of the lake. But yeah, you got Chris and Billy are alive, glowing and laughing at a local gas station while covered in blood, fully aware that Little Death is going to return, but loving the game. So I guess the reading here is that Chris never really left the woods or returned to LA. The bleeding of the 80s tape grain into the final scene suggests she chose to permanently trap her consciousness inside the fictional safety of Camp Miasma universe with Billy. And instead of the classic final girl decapitating the killer, Chris and Billy achieve emotional liberation through symbiosis. They rewrite decades of transphobic slasher tropes by embracing the monster's pain rather than sanitizing it. And on a meta industry level, Chris's real victory is ruining the studio's cynical cash grab by creating something so personal, kinky, and wildly uncommercial. She ensures the IP can never be sanitized for a soulless corporate reboot. And you explore some of the themes in this. I mean, like kind of getting out of your head and into the body. Chris begins the story paralyzed by academic irony, film school jargon, and dissociation. Billy acts as the grounded anchor who pushes Chris past abstract theory into real physical sensation, fluids, and vulnerability. The movie explicitly treats slasher violence as an arena of erotic play and boundary testing. The camp rules function like safe words, letting Chris confront past trauma and taboo fantasies inside a controlled, consensual framework with genuine aftercare. And from one of my favorite scenes in the movie, it's like reclaiming monstrosity through music, because during the massacre set to Counting Crows Along December, the narrative completely hands the stage to Little Death, transforming the character from a monster of 80s panic into a figure of movement, grace, and queer survival. And, there's horror as an endless sanctuary. The winter to summer jump frames horror not as a nightmare trap, but as a comfortable, cyclical playground where outcasts can rewrite their own stories over and over again. So Camp Miasma isn't going to work for everyone. If you're hunting for a paint-by-number slasher with cheap jump scares, you're probably going to walk away completely baffled. But if you want a gorgeously shot, candy-coated meditation on body liberation, kink, and horror obsession that treats 80s exploitation with genuine love, it is an absolute blast. It lays its subtext a bit too bare compared to the lingering existential dread of I Saw the TV Globe, but the sheer craft, the performances from Einbinder and Anderson, and that killer Lynchian texture makes it something to respect the hell out of. So I'm giving Teenage Sex and Death at Camp Miasma a rock-solid 3.5 out of 5. But what did you think of Camp Miasma? Let me know down in the comments below. If you like this video, hit like and consider subscribing. If you want to support the channel a little further, hit that join button down below. It helps a lot. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.